Welcome to Tech News Nerds, your source for the latest in tech. If you're coming back from the first episode, we really appreciate it. Thank you. If you're new here, welcome. I'm your co-host Adam, and this is Johannes. You can say hi.
Hi.
Yep. We have a lot of interesting stories for you guys today, so stay tuned. We're going to start off with the Note 20 Ultra. So there's a lot of controversy within this phone right now. I personally have one and I really enjoy it, but there is a discrepancy in the cooling systems. No matter if you have the Exynos version, the Snapdragon version, there's two cooling options. One is the copper vapor chamber and the other is the graphite thermal pad. So Zach from Jerry Rig Everything brought this to more light. We actually saw it on Reddit a little bit before, but he showed that his Note, which was the international version, had a graphite thermal pad in it, and explaining how that was inferior and that maybe this was leading to the thermal problems we heard with the Note. Now, actually, and let me pull this up for you guys. So right here, iFixit showed this off a little before Zach, but he was a big part of this as well. And then I saw on Reddit a link to this. Now, in this Reddit and this video, it explained that Zach was wrong for what he said about the graphite thermal pad. This video goes on to say that actually these pads are quite expensive. Samsung wasn't cutting out on cost here, and their thermal conductivity was very good, even in comparison to copper. So that lies the question, what's going on here? And what I first thought was maybe it had to do with the shortage of materials due to the current state of the world. But that could play a role, and maybe Samsung found a decent alternative in the graphite pad. I'm not exactly sure if it's inferior or not, but this Reddit article, which became into a tweet and YouTube video, seems to state that using data, the thermal graphite pads are actually quite effective. So what do you think, Johannes?
Yeah, well, historically, we've seen that data doesn't really translate exactly to user experience. And
Right.
it's the same thing with specs. They only tell half the story. So the fact that we have, seen Samsung manufacture devices with copper pipes and copper heat sinks, and they haven't had any significant thermal issues. And the first time they actually try switching to another material, were met with so much controversy surrounding it. I feel, yeah, despite the fact that, on paper or spec-wise or theoretically speaking, graphite is a viable alternative to copper, it might not, really perform as well in your day-to-day use. Because most of the devices that have been overheating, I am pretty sure are the ones with the graphite, cooling system. And regardless of how they said it's gonna, or regardless of how this article says it's going, or this Reddit rather is going, says it shouldn't really have that much difference between the both materials. We can obviously see it's not just one person or two people saying that their devices are overheating. We have tens and probably even hundreds of people who have the same problem. And the scary part of this all is the fact that, you don't know, you can't tell. You definitely would not know if you have the copper version or the graphite version. It's not like they gave the copper version to the Snapdragon devices or the graphite version to Exynos. Yeah, it would have been easier to discern what the problem was if there was more of a clear disparity. But there isn't. It's like random, and you just have to, sit and pray that your phone doesn't get so hot.
Right. And that's a great point. It might not exactly translate to how we're seeing it exactly. I personally have the Note 20 Ultra, and I haven't experienced those heating problems. Now, maybe that's due to me having the Snapdragon version, due to the difference in processors, because we know Exynos does get a lot hotter. But that being said, if maybe I do have the copper vapor chamber, I don't know which one exactly I have. And that's like what you said, that's the hardest part about all of this. We can't determine what exactly factor Is it the Exynos chipset? Is it the 120 hertz display because that's new? Is it the thermal pad versus copper? We just are seeing a lot of issues with this Note, which is quite sad because I'm enjoying my time with mine.
Of course, you would enjoy your time with yours. It costs it's like Marquez said in his video. I mean, yeah, it's a great device, but at $1,300, it better be. Like,
Yes.
we expect nothing less. It's so expensive.
Right.
So,
Okay. So we'll go on to our next story. That was interesting. Let us know what you guys think about the Note 20 Ultra in the comments if you are watching on YouTube.
or if you're listening on Anchor or Spotify, feel free to tweet at us at Tech News Nerds.
Yep.
1. Tech News Nerds _1. Yeah,
Correct.
that's
And
it.
that'll be linked in the YouTube video as well. But we also are bringing it to Apple and Google Podcasts coming soon, so stay tuned for that.
Mhm.
All right. So our next story has to do with the iPhone 12 Pro series. So there was a lot of news from the last week when we recorded this. We talked about how there would not be 120 hertz. That seems to be up in the air now, which is a good thing. And we talked about some of the decreases in the different aspects of the phone in comparison to what we thought it would be. Now, Everything Apple Pro and Jon Prosser both came out with separate PVT model videos showing that 120 hertz is running on the iPhone 12 Pro Max as well as the iPhone 12 Pro. Jon Prosser showed it on the 12 Pro Max and Everything Apple Pro showed it on the 12 Pro. So there is some hope for 120 hertz on the iPhone 12 Pro series. Now, Ross Young, who is a display expert, came in and said there's production issues with the drivers. Apple's going to have to push back the iPhone 12 Pro series if they want to have 120 hertz on it. So the production issue could be where we might not see 120 hertz because I don't feel like Apple wants to push this back even more than they already have.
Mhm.
And that's sad to me because I love 120 hertz, but there's some other things to talk about with these leaks as well. So Everything Apple Pro did talk about the production costs of 5G, and that is why we're getting smaller batteries. He explained that with sub 6, that's about $80 increase in Apple's production costs, and, well, per model, of course, and the millimeter wavelength also costs 150 if you have sub 6 and millimeter wave. So that's going to be a good chunk in production costs for Apple. So that's probably why we are seeing these smaller batteries because they got to save costs somehow.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then the final part of all this before we get on to our thoughts is the A14 Bionic. Everything Apple Pro showed that it has a 15% performance increase from the A13 Bionic, which was already an incredible chipset. So that's going to be very nice, as well as 20% plus efficiency, which will help with the smaller batteries, of course. So what do you think about this, Johannes?
Ironically, I just shot a video for like the iPhone 12 series leaks so far today.
Yeah.
And yeah, I watched this video by Jon Prosser talking about everything you said. And yeah, I had this conversation with a friend a few days ago, actually, about 120 hertz. And I was trying to explain to him that, I wouldn't be like, I take a lot of things that Apple do, and I just take it as, okay, it's Apple. They're being Apple. They want the technology to be, near perfect before they implement it into their devices. But then I feel like they don't have a good reason not to introduce 120 hertz because we've had ProMotion displays on iPads for a long time now. They've already been using the 120 hertz technology on their other devices, on the iPads. So personally, I'm not an Apple engineer. I don't know what goes on at Apple, but I don't think it would be so difficult for them to, transfer that technology into the iPhones. And if like what we've heard is true and they're having problems with the drivers and so on and so forth, and they might have to push back the release of the devices, then I mean I think it's worth it honestly to have it a couple of weeks or maybe a month delayed but then you get even more future proofing on your device. Like, okay, it comes with 5G. It probably is going to have LiDAR, the LiDAR sensor,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. It's going to have all of the things we expect from the new iPhone. And then it gets 120 hertz display, and then your entire experience just, skyrockets. Because the few times I've used an iPhone, like the iOS experience is like really smooth. And now just imagine that on 120 hertz display. Like, it's just, you have to do it. It's something a lot of people would want. So
Right.
yeah, those are my thoughts basically.
Absolutely, which is definitely valid. The only thing I'll defend Apple here is in comparison to the iPad, these will be on OLED displays, which changes a little bit of how you do the technology. With the OLED displays, we've seen some kind of differences in whether it's OnePlus 8 Pro. You've seen the tinting issues and everything. So maybe Apple, they're very conservative. They don't want a single issue with any of this. And maybe that could be holding them back just a little bit. But we know with being conservative, another point here, which I thought was interesting, was in the image itself, it showed that the notch was the same exact size as we covered in the last video. All but confirming it. And again, I'm not happy. What are your thoughts about the notch?
The funny thing is, like I said, I spoke to a friend yesterday and we talked about the notch. And he told me that he listened to the first episode of our podcast
Oh,
and
that's
he
awesome.
enjoyed it. Yeah, he enjoyed it. But then he said, because he's an iPhone user, and he's like, but then the both of us like analyze Apple and their actions from an Android point of like view. And I'm like, how? He
Yeah.
says he says we're looking at it like, the way Android companies work. They're always pushing out innovation. They're always listening to the consumers. We told Samsung we wanted an ultra wide camera. They gave us an ultra wide camera. We wanted high refresh rates. They gave us high refresh rates. But Apple, technically, they don't really listen to the consumer. What they listen to is what's going to give them profit. Because because it's a business at the end of the day, and you don't get $2 trillion by giving your consumers everything they want. Now, if they know that it's going to cost them even more money in research and development just to move the speaker a little bit higher and make the notch smaller, then they're definitely going to be like, do the consumers actually need a smaller notch? Not really. Let's save the
I
money.
do.
Let's just yeah, but then that's the thing though. Like they're not even gonna listen. Even if the majority of consumers are like, Apple, we want a smaller notch. Give us a smaller notch, or we riot. Tim Cook is just gonna be in his office like, nah, you don't need it. I know what you need. You don't need a smaller notch. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's the difference between Tim Cook and Steve Jobs. In the Steve Jobs era, Apple was innovating and Android was the one who were copying them. And
Exactly.
now we see it flipped around. And yes, it's a great business model. They spend less relatively to the others in research and development, which, it's going to make them more money. Send it to the investors and stuff. But I do take offense to call me an Android user. I bought iPhones from the 6 to the 10 every year. That was my phone. And I love Apple. I just really hope for better, So it's just kind of
Wait.
funny. Definitely
Oh
funny.
no, hold on. Now I take offense because you took offense to being called an Android user. I'm actually an Android user. What's that supposed to mean? Do you think you're better than
Well,
me?
he's saying I'm not coming from a point of an Android user. Man, I might have started on Android, but I switched to iOS pretty decently quickly and stayed there for a while before I'm like, all right, I'm sick of this. But yeah, we'll go on to the next story now. We've talked enough about iPhone 12, but it's definitely interesting to see these takes. I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Oh yeah.
Our next story is on the Surface Duo. And as you guys have probably seen by now, a bunch of the reviewers have gotten in their review units, although they've only been showing the hardware. They cannot show us the software yet at the current point of filming this episode. And a lot of them are expressing how the Surface Duo is actually a marvel hardware-wise, which is quite interesting to me because it does look quite elegant, as I've seen. It looks extremely thin for a quote-unquote foldable. We'll talk about that. But my issue is the price at, well, it starts at $1,400, guys. As you can see on this page, it's going to release on September 10th, and it's going to be available in a couple configurations, I believe. I think there's a 128 gigabyte storage and a 256, but we'll definitely look into that. So yeah, here's what I want to talk about. I am quite skeptical of it. It's not a foldable, okay? My laptop is foldable if this is a foldable.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, so that can't be. But nevertheless, this does have a place somewhere. I think it's still quite interesting, although the hinge does go in the middle, and it would look ridiculous to look at content on this thing. Well, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm like, I think they were going more like they were going for the like LG's take
Yeah.
on foldables. It's not meant to be one single media consumption device. They're more like, okay, you can consume media on this screen while you're working on this screen. Like you're doing one thing here and another thing here. Because I mean, look at the hinge. It's like a bezel. It's an obstruction. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to be watching any Netflix videos on both screens. I mean, it's not going to be an enjoyable experience. It
Right,
looks
you'd
like
be
a
a madman.
Nintendo DS. Yeah, you'd be a madman. Exactly. It's like saying you're playing a video game with just one continuous screen on a Nintendo DS, and you're like,
Yeah,
hello?
absolutely.
No.
And my biggest issue is, okay, I'm all right. Maybe there is a thing in the middle here. But if I want to watch on either screen, I'm still only getting 5.5 inches of an aspect ratio that looks quite weird with these humongous bezels. And it only has a 3,500 milliamp hour battery to power both these things with the Snapdragon 855 that it has in it, which is going to be a quite old chip by the time that this releases September 10th.
Yeah, that's the thing. The battery is a big concern because you're powering two quite I wouldn't call them big, but you're powering two displays, and the chipset is not the latest and greatest from Qualcomm. It's not going to be as efficient as the 865 series and so on. But I think they would not have made the decision to put in that amount of battery if they knew that it wouldn't be enough or something. So yeah, I just want to believe that Microsoft know what they're doing with this, because to me, someone who has never used this before and will probably never use this because I don't have $1,400. I honestly don't know what the need or what the use is. Like I don't know who the target audience for this is.
Yeah.
I mean, Marquez in his video said that there are a couple of excuses you can make for the Surface Duo. It's it's a first generation product. It's this, it's that. It's going to get better. The same thing with the Galaxy Fold. It had that hideous notch inside of the phone. The front screen had the big bezels, and now look at the Z Fold 2 Flip thingamajiggy. Terrible name.
Great naming, right?
It's atrocious. It's a travesty. But the design did get a lot better. The front display got a lot bigger. They got rid of the notch and replaced it with the hole punch, which looks much nicer. I would have preferred the hole punch to be in the corner, rather than just like 3/4 of a way through. But
that's my biggest complaint as well. Obviously, it can't be in the middle. There's a hinge there.
There's a
hinge
not
a possibility, but in the corner would have looked a lot better because it just looks very asymmetrical at that point. But yeah, we're going on a tangent for sure.
Yeah, we are. Well, no, okay. So bringing it back to the Surface Duo, like I said, I'm not really sure what market they're targeting with this, because you can't use this as a phone. It's gonna be like those people who hold tablets up to their ears, like, yeah, hello, yeah, how are you? Yeah, like with two hands. It's you can't use it as a phone. You
like
can't
my note on my ear, right?
Oh no, come on! Your note on your ear looks somewhat manageable. Imagine me with an iPad Pro on my ear. Yeah, like I see people do that, and I'm like, that is not what a tablet is for, people.
It's like when you see people taking pictures with their tablet. You're like, no.
Yeah. So you can't use it as a phone. You can't use it as a laptop because, like, there are no physical keys. You'd have to be typing on the screen as well, which isn't really the most convenient feeling in the world.
Right.
So yeah, Microsoft is being just a little bit strange with this.
It definitely is strange, but I'm glad they're trying it. I'm gonna see software's key. We know it. We see these
Hmm.
specs are meh, but if Microsoft tuned the software to where these reviewers, because they're gonna be the ones picking this up, think that okay, this is useful, then we can get excited for it in the future.
Hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. Software is key. I really hope this doesn't end up like the Microsoft phones because they had tremendous potential.
They
But
did.
then, lack of apps. And then I remember I used to be so jealous of people who had Lumia devices, like when I
Yeah.
was in high school. And I'm like, oh God, I want one. And then all of a sudden they just disappeared. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that sucks.
There's only room for two. The devs don't want to do three. So
Yeah.
that's the hard part. But yeah, my
Hmm.
dad actually had one for work as well, and it was actually really smooth, and the interface was quite nice, but the
Oh
app
yeah,
support was horrendous. So
definitely.
yeah. So we're definitely interested to see this. So our next story comes from ZTE, and they are actually the first ones that are commercially going to launch an under display camera, which
Ooh.
is quite interesting. They've kind of said that they've reinvented the display by putting some kind of coating on it, right? Fancy marketing jargon to say, hey, there's not going to be distortion when I use the under display camera. And that's what I saw in Xiaomi's their first image and prototype of it was that the under display camera did not look good. I believe there was you could clearly kind of see it. It didn't blend in as
Hmm.
nicely. I'm
Hmm.
actually okay with Samsung's hole punch, especially in the Note 20 Ultra. I can barely even tell it's there. And if we go like right here, let's see. Can you find it?
Where's Waldo? No, I
Where's Waldo?
cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely nice, especially when you put one of those wallpapers on it. I don't even see the hole punch anymore because
Hmm.
Samsung actually puts a bar at the top most of the time, and it's usually black, so it blends in there. I have a background where I can barely see it. There's some games I can see it, but it looks incredible. So,
Yeah.
yes, I'm excited to see how this goes for sure. And Xiaomi, actually, and I am definitely butchering their pronunciation, but that is okay.
It's
Right
fine.
here, they're showing that they're going to ship their own one next year, and I think I'm a little more excited for that because I'm a little skeptical of ZTE's version. Although they do say that they have fixed the quote-unquote issues, I'm worrying about how the camera quality is going to look, what's the
Hmm.
durability of the display, and if they actually have no distortion or it looks quite clean with that cutout. So, what are your thoughts on this?
The thing is, selfie cameras have always been a very delicate subject matter because, people are always with the rapid advancement or rapid growth of social media and so on and so forth. People's needs for good selfies keep on increasing and increasing, and I feel like anything that could potentially result in the users getting worse selfies, people would not really buy into that. That's why a lot of brands always put out this beauty mode and so on and so forth in their devices. They want you to look more appealing than you actually do. Yeah, but I don't know why like pores are a bad thing. I like my face with my pores and everything. Like no beauty
Yeah.
mode and
I
beauty
think
mode.
it's better when it shows detail. And sometimes
Yes.
with the skin smoothing, I've definitely seen that
Oh
on the
yeah.
note. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like to turn
Yeah.
it
I
off.
I hate soft pictures and
Yeah.
all of that. So yeah, I feel like if they claim to have, perfected or refined the technology to a point where distortion is, minimum and or minimal rather and so on and so forth, then okay, I guess all we can do right now is just wait and see how it actually, works in real life. We always say specs only tell half the story. The hardware only tells half the story. Let's see how they're able to like, do it because I feel like a level of software implementation will also be required, for color correction, for maybe lens distortion correction, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna have to see. Maybe the hardware is actually great, but then they might fall short when it comes to software.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We'll definitely have to look for that.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think that's it for that story. Our final story of today is actually quite a new story. It came out this morning exclusively at first on Android Central, and they're saying OnePlus is launching the OnePlus Clover. Now, the OnePlus Clover is a very budget-minded phone. It's going to start at $200. And let's see if I can find these specs for you guys. So we got Android 10 and Oxygen OS 10, a 6.5-inch HD plus IPS. Yikes. I'm sorry. That gives me iPhone SE vibes. Ugh. Not a fan of IPS or 720p, but that's what we're getting here. It is a $200 phone. You get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 460. Okay.
Yeah.
4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage. It says micro SD. I read up before there was no micro SD, but good thing we see that here. You always like to
Yeah.
see the ability to add more storage, especially on 64 gigabytes. You got a maybe decent camera in the 13, and then 2 you can just scratch off.
Oh yeah,
So,
they're probably gonna be like something dumb, like a depth sensor and a micro lens or
oh,
something.
that's exactly what they are. That's gotta be
Yeah,
at 2
depth sensor and
megapixels.
micro lens.
Yeah, exactly.
Ugh.
Ugh. They do retain the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, so that's nice to see for you guys who love audio.
Hmm.
6,000 milliamp hour battery, huge. That's great. That thing's gonna last like days. Imagine this
Yeah, huh?
processor, the IPS panel at 720p. This thing is gonna last a long time. And 18 watts. You know what? That's bigger than the 5-watt charger that comes in the SE, so we'll take it. But yeah, um, for me personally, I'm quite disappointed in OnePlus here because I don't know if you saw when Marquez interviewed Carl on the Nord. Carl made it a point that OnePlus didn't want to ship junk, and that's a Steve Jobs statement, but they didn't want to ship anything that felt like slow. And I have to think, since he said that they needed to wait for the mid range processor in the 765G that they apparently used to get a lot better to where it feels no different from their flagships. And then now they're coming out with this Clover series, which is separate from the Nord, that just feels like a big compromise. It feels like
Mhm.
they are settling, and, given their slogan of never settle, this doesn't settle with me well. Lots of settles there.
All the puns intended.
All the puns intended.
Mhm. Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I'm not really a fan of I'm not a fan of a couple of things I see here because of the financial situation in my country. I find myself in a position where I have to constantly look at mid-rangers and budget devices to recommend to friends and family and so on and so forth. And to be very honest with you, at $200, you could get better from other smartphone companies, from other, you could get better from Xiaomi, definitely.
Yeah.
The Redmi Note 9 or the Redmi 9 rather is at 100 and what 180 or $150. The Redmi Note 9S is
Wow.
about $200 or so. You get a 1080p display. Yes, it's LCD, but it's 1080p. You get the hole punch. You get a glass sandwich. It's glass on both sides, not
Wow.
plastic at the back. Yeah, you get what 25-watt fast charging or so. Yeah, you get a 5,020 milliamp hour battery. You get a much faster processor than this. I don't remember what, I think maybe a 730. I feel like the mid-range sector is dominated by like, Xiaomi, maybe Oppo, maybe Realme. And the funny thing is Realme is, okay, no, let's not even get into that. But yeah, but I feel like if OnePlus really wanted to like, branch into the really, really budget segments or the entry level segment, they could have done a bit better than this. They
And
could
I
have done a
agree,
bit better than
definitely.
this.
In the US, where this is actually coming, unlike the Nord,
Mm,
you mentioned how Xiaomi, Redmi, all those guys are doing well. Now, my alternative is to people in the US because we don't have those kind of options.
mm-hmm,
Go for the renewed or the used flagships or older phones because you can get a Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus for about $200. You can get the Pixel 3a XL for about $200. You can get the OnePlus 6T actually for about $200, all three of which would be better than this option in my opinion. The only area this probably beats it really is battery life. But
Yeah.
other than that, those phones are going to give you a much better experience for the price.
hmm You see, that's the problem when a lot of companies, one particular company, which I will call out, Transsion Holdings, they are the scourge of Africa, keep on tormenting us with terrible, terrible phones, micro USB, and so on and so forth. They feel like, because the phones are so cheap, the only thing they have to change every year is the battery. So this year we get 4,000 milliamp hours. Next year we get 5,000. The next year we get 6,000. The processor, the chipset remains the same. The display remains the same. We still get micro USB. The cameras remain the same. Everything remains the same. You still have a hot mess of a smartphone, but with a bigger battery. People, we do not want battery banks. We want smartphones.
Yeah,
If I wanted 10,000 milliamp hours, I would go out and buy a power bank from Anker or something.
yeah,
So yeah, I feel like that's what OnePlus is doing here because honestly, the processor is subpar. The Snapdragon 460. I know what I personally had to deal with the Snapdragon 450. I hated it on the Galaxy A6 Plus. That
hmm
was about 2 years ago. It was a terrible processor on a terrible device. Do
So
not
this is
recommend.
probably going to be the same.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think so. I mean, okay, well, to be fair, that device was running Samsung Experience. This was before One UI. So
yeah,
that could have, done something. Oxygen OS might make this device feel a lot smoother and so on and so forth.
yeah,
But still, I mean, nah, this isn't gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be good. Like last thing, I feel
yeah,
like OnePlus should have allowed the Nord, go to the States. Like
yeah.
they should have shipped the Nord to the United States. That's their biggest mistake with this entire their shipping process and so on and so forth. Because the OnePlus Nord is very impressive. If they wanted to enter the US market, they should have entered with that and be like, yeah, we have a cheaper alternative to all these expensive smartphones. Come and buy this. And then people would be like, oh, yeah, okay, this makes sense. If you introduce the Clover into the US, where your competition is Samsung and Apple and maybe LG and Motorola or something,
Yeah.
you're basically just giving a lot of people, especially Apple users, no hate, but you're giving a lot of Apple users reasons to be like, look how slow your Android is. Look
Yeah.
how bad your Android camera is. It's not Android. It's just.
Yeah, and that is a huge problem because at least here in the US, you're spot on. A lot of people are
Mhm,
like, ew, Android. You guys have terrible cameras. You guys are
exactly.
slow. But if you
hmm
look at the Androids of recent days and compare them to the flagships, same price and everything, they're doing quite well, if not better, than the iPhones in many areas. But to your point about Oxygen OS versus your experience with like TouchWiz, right?
hmm
Oxygen OS, although it's very smooth, it's very clean, it's a big operating system. It takes up a lot of storage. It's quite heavy, actually, even though it runs quite smoothly. So I believe it was Max Weinbach who pointed this out. So I
hmm
definitely worry about Oxygen OS 10 even on this. I think you could slow down their experience and kind of ruin their image of, oh, we're speed, speed, speed.
Yeah, I mean, OnePlus always came up with the entire like built for speed slogan. That was their entire shtick. Like they're like, oh, we're cheap, we're fast, we're giving you flagship, what's it called, a flagship experience
Yeah.
with with a reasonable price.
Yep.
But from the OnePlus 7 Pro, they just started the OnePlus 6T basically. They just started straying further and further away from their source material, and they've become this jumbled thing that I don't even know what to classify them as anymore. I mean, they went from having one phone a year to two phones a year, the number and the T, which
Yes.
was okay. Then they started having the OnePlus 6, the OnePlus 6T, the OnePlus 6T Pro, the OnePlus 6 Pro, and I'm like, okay. And then they started with the OnePlus Nord, OnePlus Clover, and before you know it, if they're not careful, they'll start releasing 40 phones a year like our beloved Samsung, and they
Right.
will not update anyone.
Yeah, and that's a huge concern. Like you said, OnePlus is straying away from their kind of image. Like I said in the beginning, never settle, clearly
Mhm.
settling right now.
Oh
And
yeah.
that is a big issue to me. Although some people are probably going to be interested in this phone nevertheless, I just feel it's a bad look for OnePlus.
hmm But I mean, the name of the phone is pretty catchy. OnePlus Clover.
Yes, I do like the
We have to
name
give them
actually.
that. Yeah, we have
OnePlus
to give them
Ward,
that.
OnePlus Clover. I actually like them. I'm a fan. But that's gonna be it for today. I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Spotify or Anchor, you can check out YouTube for the video. We'll also be posting clips very soon if you want a shortened version or you want to see particular stories. Although those clips will not have everything we talk about in the actual podcast.
Yeah, so like the clips are like a very easy way for you to like, have some teasers in case you want to recommend the podcast to your friends and they're like, oh, okay, I don't want to spend 30 minutes listening to two people I don't know. Just direct them there. Be like, oh, here's a 5-minute clip. You can watch that and,
Yep.
get what the entire vibe of the podcast is about.
Yep,
So,
exactly. So, hope you all are staying safe out there, and that will do it. Peace.
okay, yeah. Thank you guys. Peace.